It's a far, far better thing I do than I have ever done before. A far better resting place that I go to than I have ever known.
Are you okay, Jim? How do you feel?
Old. Young. I feel like listening to this episode of the Retro Rewind podcast.
Reflux capacitor fluxing. Crew to stations. Scanning for Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, 1982. Prepare to rewind in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome, Rewinders and new listeners, to the Retro Rewind podcast, where we take a fresh look at movies and games from 15 or more years ago. I'm your captain of the pod, Francisco Ruiz, and I'm joined by your XO and mine, Paul, the master. Interrupter. Powers.
Ah, Kirk, my old friend. Do you know the Klingon proverb that tells us revenge is a dish that is best served cold?
It is very cold.
In space. Also, for this excursion into Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, we are joined by none other than the fellas from the Geek at Arms podcast. Welcome aboard. First, radio broadcaster James Felix.
How are you guys doing tonight?
Doing well, James. Thanks for being here for your first excursion with us.
I know it's an honor to finally be on the Retro Rewind podcast.
And it's an honor to have you on our fair show as well. We also welcome back Associate Pastor Felipe Antonio Juan Sanchez III, also known as Mike Fraley. Welcome back, Mike.
Thanks for having us.
Of course. Us? Like you and Felipe?
Us. Yes. I mean, me and my alter ego. I mean, we have separate diplomas, we have separate licensures.
That's amazing.
I even have different IDs for different states, different passports, all sorts of I should really not be talking about this.
Yeah. You're blowing your cover. But it's glad to have you back, Mike. And completing the Geek at Arms Triforce, we welcome back visual effects artist Bryan Ray. Welcome back, Bryan.
Thank you very much, Captain.
You're welcome very much. Now that you have a quick flyby of who we are, Paul, can you give us a quick overview of the production specs for Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan?
Yeah, sure, why not? I got nothing else better to do. Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan was released June 4th, 1982. So it's an 80s movie. It runs an hour and 53 minutes and is rated PG. It was directed by Nicholas Meyer and was written by Harve Bennett, Jack B. Sowards, and I thought I saw a third writing credit in the credits, but I could be wrong.
No, there were others. There's and Gene Roddenberry was credited with the concept, and I think Nicholas Meyer added to the screenplay or something like that.
Well, they did a bang-up job, and we'll talk more about that later. With lead stars of this movie being William Shatner, make sure he's always first, Leonard Nimoy, and DeForest Kelley. The music was composed by James Horner, which is so unusual for a Star Trek film.
Yeah, because it's usually Jerry Goldsmith, right?
Yeah, sure. All right.
He was too expensive for this production.
Okay.
All right, you ready to play the box office trivia game?
I am ready. You guys ready?
Ready.
Oh, yeah.
Let's do this.
Okay. Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, was made for $12 million and earned almost $96 million at the box office. Almost broke the 100. Good job. All right, given this fact and the fact that it's one of currently 13 movies released in theaters worldwide that are also Star Trek.
Sure.
How high do you think it ranks among the 13 Star Trek films, not counting inflation?
Not counting inflation. All right, well, let's start with our guests. Let's start with James. What's your prediction? Or guess. Maybe you know, but...
I don't know, but, considering that it was made for less than the motion picture, but it made less in the box office, and considering that the motion picture was just basically 3 hours of video of the Enterprises from different sides, that blows my mind. But you also have to take into account that 3 of those movies are the J.J. Abrams verse, the Kelvin-verse movies. Mm-hmm. So, and Star Trek 6 did really well. Star Trek 4 did really well. Star Trek 5
number, James.
Was a thing.
We can come back and maybe at the end of the episode.
I'm going to put it at number 8.
Number 8. All right. How about you, Mike?
I'm gonna go with 4.
4. And Brian, what's your guess?
10.
10. In chat, we have Enthusiast says 4 as well. Dale says 3. Geek Devotion says 2. And That's Our Babo says 3. I'm gonna guess lower just because I can. I'm gonna guess 12. So,
All
Paul, what is the magic number?
Did Brian say 10?
I did.
Brian did say 10, yes.
Ding, ding, ding.
Ooh.
You are today's
Oh,
winner.
wow.
It's number 10.
Inflation
I knew it was low.
hurts.
It does. Oh my goodness. Well, thank you for those factoids, Paul. And let's see if any of them factor into our memory mind meld or subsequent roundtable discussion, which we'll get into once Alice has located our target film.
Alert, alert. Approaching target. Spoilers incoming. Establishing analysis vector.
Somewhere in the darkest reaches of the universe, a battle is about to begin. A battle between good and evil, between a warrior and a madman. A battle that will take you from the end of time to the beginning of creation. A battle between the awesome power of the Starship Enterprise and the Wrath of Khan. Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. Rated PG.
Now showing at a theater near you.
Yes. I'm so excited because all my theaters are closed near me.
Oh my, you jokester, Paul. We may not remember back to the birth of creation, but let's see what memories we collectively had for Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. Here is our memory mind meld synopsis. Chekhov panics when he sees a spaceship and starts shouting, Botany Bay! Botany Bay! He and Captain, what's his name? Get earworms that live in their brains and then reveal that Starfleet is so bad at exploring that they can't remember how many planets are supposed to orbit Ceti Alpha. Meanwhile, a Cheers bartender fails the Makobi Marushu. Okay. Well,
Kobayashi Maru.
No, I think it's the Makobi Marushu. While killing off almost the entire main cast, something they wouldn't hope for till Star Trek V, The Final Frontier. Spock reveals that Vulcans are allowed to lie all they want as long as they call it something else. An exaggeration. Kirk finds out that he has a son who is developing the Genesis device, but the son is killed, prompting Kirk to yell, Khan! Khan quotes Captain Ahab as he detonates the Genesis device, hoping to kill Kirk. But Galvatron sacrifices himself to save the ship. Cue bagpipes. I mean, sure, some of that was on, but some of it was decepted. But based on those memories as flawed, they are totally flawed as they were. What rating did they lead us to predict for this film before our rewatch? Classic, nostalgic, or tragic? I'm just going to go down the line. Brian, what was your prediction for Star Trek II?
I predicted nostalgic.
Nostalgic. And Mike?
I predicted nostalgic.
Nostalgic. James?
I'm going to break the mold and say classic.
Classic.
Thank you. How could anyone not predict classic? Which is what I predicted.
You predicted classic too. And I predicted classic. I had never seen this movie before. Just I've heard such high praise for it that I
Sorry,
predicted
that was my fault.
classic.
I remembered it being slow, and so I figured that the pacing would probably be a stumbling block for younger viewers, people who hadn't seen it before.
I could see
Well,
that.
anyone
We'll
who
see.
has
Same
that
boat.
fear should watch the first film.
Oh my gosh.
And then the second one.
Oh.
This one's a roller coaster of whimsy and wonder.
Yeah, it moves at warp 9 in comparison.
Yes.
It'll be interesting to see if those predictions came true. But first, let's get into our discussion of the things we liked most about Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. Let's spin up our...
Best 3.
All right, let's start with James.
Well,
this
actually, I'm going to go
time.
ahead and interrupt. Are we doing the best two?
Yes, it's best two. Exactly, best two.
Okay.
So we'll give one thing we liked, then go through classic makers, then and then continue the show. So, James, what's something you liked about Star Trek 2?
Even though I've watched this movie like several dozen times, the spaceship scene, the final scenes of the Enterprise versus Reliant, is it stop motion? Are the special effects very slight? Did they make the Mutara Nebula by putting ink into a fish?
Yes.
Wait,
Aquarium?
ink into fish?
Aquarium, thank you.
Oh,
Yeah, yes.
many
Into an
fish
aquarium.
died for
Um,
the sake of this film.
yes. The Reliant was actually just a dead goldfish. And
Oh,
they just
man.
touched it up in
Okay,
post.
that's some good post right there.
But I still look at this movie through the eyes of like a 10-year-old.
Oh,
And
cool.
I'd always wanted to see a Star Trek movie do what Star Wars had done and give us a cool space battle.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I still feel like it holds up today.
Yes.
I mean, the anticipation, the music that goes along with it, and the people in the Kirk versus Khan,
Mhm.
the emotions that are tied into it make it a great series of events and great scenes
Mhm.
that I still love and still watch over and over and over.
Awesome. So, Brian, I'm curious, was anything about that final battle something that you enjoyed, or like whether it's the effects overall or in that? Or
Well, I'll talk about the battle and the ship effects separately a little bit later.
Okay. All right.
But for my first like, it's the Genesis effect animation.
Okay.
Unsurprisingly, as a visual effects artist, that's a very, very important effect. That was one of the first computer graphics that they showed up on a feature film screen.
You know, it's
That's
just
right.
dawning on me that this was 82, and that is
Yeah.
super early for how good it
Yeah.
looked. Wow.
That and
I think it's the longest up to that time as far as the
yeah.
details.
Okay.
and I actually had one of my first CG programs. I had the Genesis effect as a thing that I could render out.
Oh, cool. Oh, really?
Mhm.
You created life.
Okay, so the Genesis effect. Mike, what was your Genesis of your likes? I mean, your first like. I was trying to be silly.
I'll say that the nebula as a setting, I thought was just a wonderful place to have the battle. Because
Really?
first of all,
You didn't find it a little convenient, like out of nowhere. Here's a nebula. Why didn't they show it before? Like,
it's space. Why not have it? Well, though they're right next to Jupiter, aren't they? No, that's the. Sorry, that's the confusing movies.
I mean,
Never
really,
mind.
my first question is: Have you seen Star Trek? I mean, there is so much that's convenient if you just watch the series, and it just kind of slipped right into the they should have showed it on screen.
That's very.
I'll
fair,
give
yeah.
you that. But as a visually interesting setting, and also the fact that it was acting as a place to have kind of a hunt in the shadows,
Mhm.
yeah.
kind of encounter that you can't really have shadows literally being like the characters hiding in shadows taking pot shots at each other, but you find a way to make that happen with these two ships.
Mhm.
Everything's all staticky. You can't really see the other person until suddenly you're right up on them, or vice versa. And I thought it was just an interesting setting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
I thought it was a very intense Marco Polo game.
Though I'd have to agree with Paul that I think it would have been cool if they seeded it that there's
Well,
nebula there, or
they-
at least
they did.
space seeded it a little
Oh,
earlier.
It was
It should have been a
it was in the
Chekhov's gun.
background of some of the shots of Regula as they were approaching the space station. It was there
Oh,
behind
okay.
the planet. You saw that.
Okay.
It wasn't
Pinkish
close
purple
enough to the planet
environment.
that they. Sorry, we're not in the dislike. Anyway,
Yeah, let's keep on the likes. Paul, why don't you give us one of your likes?
I really enjoyed the acting, especially from Ricardo Montalban. I'm sorry, Ricardo. May you rest in peace. But every time he was on screen, I was just glued to it, watching his
cool.
performance. And even like the actor, I always find, not always, but usually I find Captain Kirk, I can't believe I forgot his name, William Shatner, interesting. Now this one, it took him a while, besides, getting over the grumpy old man kind of thing. But once he got into battle,
Mhm.
and I enjoyed, him and Bones, and everyone did such great acting, especially at the end scene there that was between Kirk and Spock, and
Mhm.
Oh, so good.
You know what? That was one of the likes that didn't make the list for me. Was I just love the back and forth between Kirk and Bones. I feel like that's my like for every Star Trek movie. So that's why I was like, okay, I'm not going to speak to that though. I'll mention it here.
That was one of my likes I didn't mention as well. Is that how the chemistry between the entire cast,
I know,
Yeah.
between
it's so good.
Kirk, McCoy, and Spock. I mean, whatever goes on in the background between these actors is not important, because on set the chemistry between them, the history between them, has made such a sense of family between them that it's a joy to watch them. It's why people kept going back to these movies over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Totally. And the chemistry of those worms going into the ears, I mean, that's crazy.
They just wanted in on the family dynamic.
Exactly.
You know, every time anybody mentions the phrase earworm, I always have flashbacks to this movie.
Oh, really? I could see that.
Me too,
it's,
yeah.
Well, it's the only earworm I've ever seen. So what else am I supposed to visualize?
These are pets.
Yeah. Pets. For my I'm gonna sort of go back to the dynamic between Kirk and Khan, and mainly Khan's myopia for defeating and gaining, I guess, a vengeance on Kirk. I love that they played with the Captain Ahab dynamic from Moby Dick, and you even see Moby Dick as one of the books in the Botany Bay little, I don't know what you call it. It looks like a cargo hold or whatever, but the crash landed ship on the desert planet. I loved that dynamic that they played with in this. It was I will say it was a little hard to understand why he was so. I mean, I realize if
He had space madness.
is that it? It just I don't know. It just seemed a bit much for for the slight against Khan of them not checking in or whatever, but
Of being marooned on a planet that was hostile to all life, and then his wife died.
They didn't know it was. They didn't know.
We're not in the
it was.
dislike section.
It's not like Kirk killed his wife right in front of him or something.
Maybe we're in a nebula and
He'd
we're
have
just
respected
floating
that.
in and out between the likes and the dislikes.
All right. Good point, Paul. You know what? Let's make things more crystal clear. Let's go right into our classic makers, the things we loved most about Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, and let's just go in reverse. So I'll go. So and you guys were speaking sort of shades of this or tones of this, but I absolutely loved how Kirk outsmarted Khan. I mean, especially it's always cool when the writers make it so that you have this highly competent, highly skilled villain or antagonist, and the to not just give the protagonist superpowers to match them, but to have them have to outsmart them in a way that makes sense. I think when that's pulled off well, it's so satisfying, and I really enjoyed how Kirk outsmarted him with the shields. And I mean, you had to have a little bit of luck there, and they even spoke to that. What if he changes his combination? Well, hope he doesn't. But I really enjoyed that element.
Yeah.
I like how Spock summed it up, says he's intelligent but not experienced.
Yes,
Right.
yes, that exactly.
And you have to forget the whole premise of him sending over the Genesis information. He didn't need it because they were able to trigger the Genesis thing anyway. So just
I
forget
missed
all
that. Yeah.
I didn't catch it. It's my first time seeing it, so I'm not quite sure what you mean.
That he at the end he detonated the Genesis,
Yeah.
right?
Even though he never received the information he wanted. I think he was wanting the specs of it so that he could make more of them, so that he can continue using it as a weapon.
Maybe.
Crude analogy. You don't need to know how a grenade is made to pull the pin and throw it.
Yeah, but you don't have to splice an atom if you want to splice an atom.
I don't think that's a
more
thing.
of your grand sage advice.
Atom
there, Paul.
splicing.
Okay, let's go back. Let's go to James next. What was your? Oh no, I'm sorry, Paul. I thought you were talking about your classic maker. What's your classic maker, Paul?
That includes that. I'll just piggyback off of Francisco and say that is my favorite turnabout by I guess the hero to a villain.
Mm-hmm.
And that is something that has always stuck with me, that how he snuck in and lowered his shields. But I'm going to go ahead and say my classic maker is the story, because there is a lot of action in this story. There is a lot of sadness in this as well. And I was almost bawling my eyes out at the end of this, just because I think it helped watching Space Seed, the original Star Trek episode with Khan in it, before watching this, because when the death of Spock came, it really hit home harder, because I was thinking about all the memories they've had together and all the adventures that they've shared. So it's not just an arbitrary character like in the middle of the film when that younger crewman died, that kid from Return to Witch Mountain, or anyway.
He might have survived if Scotty hadn't taken him to the bridge before medical bay.
That's what my daughter said.
He never left his post, yeah. I'm hoping he was dead already, but then why would you carry a dead body all the way from the bottom of engineering all the way up to the bridge just to say, anyway.
You see what your incompetence did, Kirk? You see this? This is on you.
Yes.
Somebody at the bridge pressed the elevator button.
There. Man.
Then why didn't Scotty just beam up there to the bridge if he wanted to? Anyway.
Why don't they just intra beam in a ship? I never understood this about Star Trek. Why take that lift thing when you could just like beam everywhere?
Because it's still problematic. Every now and then the transporter functions and you get spliced people.
Oh,
yeah. We've already got 2 Rikers. We don't need a dozen.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
No, Mike, no.
Okay. So anyway, my classic maker is the story.
5 Rikers. Okay. Classic maker was that.
Without any Rikers. I thought it was a great
great story.
Awesome.
Yes. James, what was your classic maker? What's the thing you loved most about this film?
For me, the score is something that I
love
so much about this movie, and it's one that I still listen to it.
Oh, cool!
All the time. Of course, when you think Star Trek, Jerry Goldsmith, he created an incredible soundtrack for the motion picture, was used in The Next Generation. But James Horner made something that was great. I mean, it was really evocative. At times it had almost like a little bit of a militaristic feel to it. Sometimes it was almost seafaring, like a kind of a swashbuckler in its tone. And I thought he did a great job about tailoring the music to individual scenes and to really strike home the point and the emotions in each one. And it's just really, really well. And for someone who was relatively unknown at this time, he really made a name for himself with it.
I mean, it's one of those soundtracks you could listen to over and over again, even if you don't realize that you are. Like if you're listening to Aliens or a bunch of trailers in the 1980s,
That was my minor gripe, and it didn't make a dislike, so I'll say here. I did feel like it sounded a lot like Aliens a lot of the time, or I guess you could say Aliens sounded a lot like this. With the drumming and the marching type style. Go ahead, Paul.
I was about to say, I thought James Horner did a great job. Even during the iconic yell, like if you listen here, you can hear the music in the background. Just emphasizing it. Yeah.
I thought, I mean, as much as James Horner may have pulled from this work in future works, I mean, I have to agree with James that this really fit the scenes that they were in. Good lighting, it just accented the mood. Not so much where you're listening to the music, but it just really punctuates the scenes that it's in.
And if you listen to the soundtrack, you could you don't even have to look at the title of the score that you're listening to. You know the exact which scene it's from.
Oh, that's
how
cool.
well he did it, tailoring it.
Wow, that's awesome. I'm sure if I watched this more, I'd be more familiar with it.
A couple dozen times, like you got to catch up, Francisco.
Okay, I'll work on that. But Mike, let's work on getting to hear what your classic maker is.
It was Ricardo Montalban. I mean, I thought that he was just absolutely amazing in this role. Like, he just seemed like he was in this role of this obsessed, driven man. The lines that he delivers are just deliciously accented. And I mean, and also, I mean, let's be real. The director was asked several times about Ricardo Montalban physically, like, is that a prosthetic chest that he was wearing? And he's like, no, this dude did a lot of push-ups for this role.
Yeah.
So, and the fact that he's willing to prep for a role, and I mean, I don't want to sound ageist, but you know, he was in his 60s,
Wow.
and the dude was still was still
in good physical form,
pounding away.
yes.
A better physical form than I am, or am likely to be in. So I'm not going to arm wrestle.
30 years or
Product
so.
of genetic engineering.
Oh, that's
Oh,
true.
that's true.
Good point. Yes.
Well, not Ricardo, so bravo to you, sir.
I don't know. I mean, look at the man.
Oh, yeah. Well, I will say, watching him perform in the original Space Seed episode, and then in this movie, he brought his acting up to a whole nother level that is so, yeah. I
Well,
agree.
it's easy to
completely.
do when you don't have like close-ups with lights right in your eyes and dark everywhere else. So,
And wearing 3 millimeters of that dark makeup.
right, exactly. Bryan, why don't you give us, I was going to say 3 millimeters of your casting makeup, but that makes no sense.
I can do
What's-
at least 6 millimeters.
Good.
Bring it.
Let's go for that, yes.
For me, it was the model photography.
Yeah.
The model of the Enterprise in this movie was just so gorgeous. The details of
I
it.
felt like I got so close up on it. Yeah, I was surprised. Yeah, I mean,
and
yeah.
that shot from underneath where you're like seeing in the windows into the cargo bay.
Mhm.
Just the details that they did like that, and the layered compositing. I think it wasn't even composited. I think they shot all of that in camera, where you've got a ship in the foreground and then the planet, and then you've got the star field or the nebula in the background, and it all works. The focus is good. The angles are good. Just all of that photography was just so well done, so smooth.
Totally.
You know, special effects we're living in an age where they're mind blowing, but there's just something to be said for just some old school effects like this. Hardly any computer generated models. They've just got a beautiful model, and it's shot so well. I mean, I'll take that any day.
Yeah. I feel like, honestly, I'll just go on a little soapbox. I feel like they should
Oh, no, here it comes.
at least start with that model. Like actually photograph it, film it, and then do any sort of enhancements with the CG, like whether it's lighting or a little like maybe people moving in the windows or stuff like that. That would be, you couldn't really do that in a model. But I think, yeah, starting with a model, there's just something about the weight of something that's real that I don't know. It's hard to, I think it's still hard to evoke that same presence in a CG when it's just a fully CG render. I mean, Bryan, you've, I'm sure, seen way more than I have of CG, so maybe you can say, no, listen here, young whippersnapper Francisco. I've seen many a weighted CG in my day. You know not what you talk about.
Well, it's true that a physical model has some advantages in terms of it's really easy to get accurate lighting. And I think that the best effects are a blend of the practical and the CG, where, like you said, you're either enhancing your physical model with something that you couldn't put there, or you're using the physical as something to build upon so that your CG looks more accurate, more truthful.
Awesome. So,
Don't mince words, Bones. What do you really think?
Well put. Awesome, guys. Well, those were some great classic makers. And now I think we can actually move. Oh, wait.
No, wait.
I
Did you
forgot
forget something?
Yeah, I
'Cause
forgot
usually
what else I
do.
liked. Yeah, I know. It's a real problem I have. You'd think I'd learn from my past mistakes, but no. There is something else I liked. In fact, you might even say it's Untold. You see, because it's the Untold Podcast, a speculative fiction podcast utilizing the genres of science fiction, fantasy, and horror, among others, in order to engage the culture's imagination from a Christian worldview. Every month, Nathan James Norman produces and narrates a new story presented in a unique and dynamic way. Check out the Untold Podcast at untoldpodcast.com to listen and leave them a review on Apple Podcasts.
Okay, great.
That was going to be my classic.
Yeah, the one more thing.
If you had one more thing, right, Mike? Yeah, okay.
Okay, then I'll ask both of you. What does that have to do with Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan?
They do produce sci-fi stories with spaceships sometimes, and this is a sci-fi story with a spaceship.
Uh-huh.
And also the real story behind Khan is the untold story of his struggle of survival on SETI Alpha 5.
Exactly. Mike gets it. Why don't you get it, Paul?
Because I want to hear more trivia about Star Trek II.
Oh, fine. Mr. Purist over here. Fine. Okay. So here's some trivia about The Wrath of Khan. And I'm sure you guys know this, but for you listening, or maybe Paul, or people or any of you that don't know this, did you all realize that the battle of wits between Kirk and Khan in the Mutara Nebula sequence was inspired by the battle between the destroyer captain Robert Mitchum and U-boat commander Kurt Jurgens in The Enemy Below from 1957, which is one of those submarine movies that Paul had never heard of when we talked about it on Red October. But
I still haven't heard of it.
Okay, well,
That's
now
a lot
you've
of
heard
words
of it
you
twice.
just said.
And so which was also the inspiration for Star Trek, the original series, Battle of Terror, or Balance of Terror. In 19... Excuse me, okay? From
Star Trek, you got to get it right. Otherwise, you'll never hear the end of it.
The Balance of Tremors. Okay. So my question to you guys is, with all that in mind, what spaceship or naval ship battle in movies or television is your favorite? Like, you watch that sequence, you could like just put that on repeat and never be satisfied.
What ship battle?
Ship battle. It could be a spaceship or a naval ship.
This is pretty good. It's hard to.
The one that jumps to my head first is the final submarine battle in the Hunt for Red October.
That is a good one. Yeah.
Which is like, Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, except underwater, and vice versa.
Yeah, because Khan's not defecting to the Federation so much. But that would be an interesting story.
No, but he does have a nondescript accent, a lot like Sean Connery, the Scotsman playing a Russian.
I see what you're saying. Yes.
The first thing that comes to my mind, it probably isn't the best, but it's pretty iconic, is The Last Starfighter and the Death Blossom that just shoots everywhere.
Yeah.
It's more of like button mashing rather than strategy,
yeah.
But
it's Galaga.
Exactly, it is Galaga.
Yeah.
That's a fun comment, Rathion. Rathion says in chat, submarine movies float under Paul's radar.
Yeah, and they continue.
Yes. Let's see. Let's go to Bryan next.
I think I have to go with Death Star 2 from Return of the Jedi.
Yes, that is a good one. I like it. Oh yeah, I
can't think of anything I like better than the Falcon flying through those tunnels.
Exactly.
And it feels just like that when you're driving on Lower Wacker Drive in Chicago. So yeah.
Yeah, totally. Lower Quacker Drive. Yeah. Mike, what's your favorite ship battle? Space, naval, or otherwise?
I think that it is the Death Star escape from Star Wars: A New Hope.
Oh, okay.
Just as their Millennium Falcon is getting away, and those 4 TIE fighters are chasing after. Just the way that it's shot and the music is just so fantastic that it sticks with me.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Those are really, really good ones. Let's see. In chat we have Dale says, I guess the climax, the last Starfire, like Paul said. And then Enthusiast says the 2 ships at the end of Master and Commander. I've never seen Master and Commander, but sure.
Oh, yeah.
Good. I'm sure that was great. For me, I'll say it's this scene from, I think it's the 3rd season of Battlestar Galactica.
That was what I was thinking too.
Yeah, Minus Rose, when the Galactica's coming into the atmosphere into what's the
that was
colony?
So cool.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
Caprica 2 or something like that. And yeah, and it FTL's out, or I love that moment so much. Okay, but
see, with Battlestar Galactica, you don't have to get it precise like Star Trek.
Oh my, Paul, whatever. Okay.
Khan. I'm laughing at the superior intellect.
Great.
Well, that was great trivia, Francisco.
Thank you, Paul.
And I have our last audience, which is not our last one ever, but our previous audience question,
Perfect.
which again was, what is your favorite Mel Brooks movie?
Oh, and let's see. And we only had one entrant for that. And
Whoa.
yeah. So, Dustin Warford, your streak starts anew.
Congratulations, Dustin. Welcome back to the winner's circle.
Indeed. And it's possible someone else sent it in last minute, but I didn't check. So this is like when I last checked. So I'm sorry if you missed the cutoff when I last checked. But Dustin, yes. And his answer was Young Frankenstein is his favorite Mel Brooks movie, which
Good choice.
I can't hold anything against that. So Dustin, you'll be getting a gifted sub to our Twitch channel. So you'll have access to our emotes, have access, and you'll get an email for the month that you have it with the behind the Edna mode outtakes for these episodes, and also the spiritual speculation, which we're going to do at the end. But congratulations, Dustin.
Yes. And so now here is this episode's listener question. Of all the Star Trek series that just keep on going with new ones and animated and such, which crew is your favorite and least favorite to watch?
Mm-hmm.
So you have to pick two.
Two, indeed. So
It could be the same crew.
I guess it could be. Yeah. Send your answers to trivia@retrorewindpodcast.com by the time we record the next episode, which gives you usually a weekend, a couple days. But now that we have all had some trivial fun, let's find out what memories you, our awesome rewinders, had about Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. First off, we have from Kevin Joshua Burnham, the Dapper Man himself. He says, so much better than the never-ending boredom of the first Star Trek film. At least with this film, you can watch and appreciate the talent along with the hard work that was done in a pragmatic way without resorting to drugs. not that I know anything about drugs or getting stoned. Thanks for letting us know, Kevin.
Patrick Edwards says, by far the best Star Trek film. This is the film that launched the franchise to what it is today. Anyone rates this anything but a classic should be jettisoned off the ship and sent to the SS Botany Bay.
Tell us how you really feel, Patrick. Deborah Powers. Excellent film and making us all believe there was still a future in the franchise yet.
Awesome.
And Wardale White says, Ricardo Montalban taking a vacation from Fantasy Island to do this movie that proved to be a whole lot better movie than its predecessor.
Awesome.
Jackie Sculpted from Clay says, Khan!
That's good. Let's see what Captain says.
I should have done the echo.
Yeah.
Drew Dodgen says, oh gosh. Why did I land on this one? Bots.
Wait.
I'm doing good there.
Excellent, but I'm the master interrupter. But anyway, don't we have someone with us that actually can speak a little bit of Klingon?
If any of you gentlemen do, please take over for this one, for Drew's.
Not I.
I took a semester in high school, but I didn't really pay attention.
Dang it.
That makes you the expert, Mike.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mike, do your best.
No, I'm lying. Okay.
Well, this is what happens to liars.
All right. I guess I lied myself into this corner. Yeah. Okay. Drew Dodgen, this is your fault, Drew. Bortas blur jablu dul rekakane, which is Klingon for revenge is a dish best served cold. Though interestingly enough, the direct translation is emotional detachment is the ideal when taking revenge. Khan or Marla McGivers must have transliterated it some.
MacGyvers?
MacGyvers, I think, but that's fine.
Oh, MacGyvers, right. Yeah, sorry, yeah.
McGivers? Didn't he call her that McGivers in the episode? Anyway.
Yeah, they used both.
Yeah.
Dirty Steve 40 has a ear with an ear emote, then a worm emote, then worms, worm emote, and some 80s puffy hair and costumes. So that's what he remembered.
Just for fun. Becky Smith says, to this day, I still can't watch the little worm going into Chekhov's ear.
Yeah.
Benjamin T. Van Diepen says, the best of a brilliant trilogy.
Ashley Cronbitter says, this was the first Star Trek property that sold me as a fan of the franchise. Ricardo Montalban as Khan stole the show for me. His acting was impeccable. I enjoyed it so much, I actually went back to the original Star Trek television series to see his origin. I should also mention... Thank you, Paul.
Dallas Panda Marshall Mora says, I remember watching this on TV as a kid, because I'm that young, actually. No, he watched it on reruns. Anyway, he continues to say, he said he saw it on TV as a kid, and he continues, I remember being confused as to why Kirk was so old. That said, I really do enjoy this one, and I enjoy the twist to the story that the modern movies have. Ooh.
David Bobke says, best of the Trek films, faux show. Montalban is awesome. I love when Trek gets blended with Shakespeare. I like the psychology of the fight in the nebula, Kirk getting confused by the other Federation ship not responding and bouncing back when Khan has him knocked down. Brilliant. And not forget, this made the Kobayashi Maru mission legendary. An inspiration to us all to never say die. As for anything I don't like, I prefer to do with what I've done with so many movies that have hurt me in the past, that wish to go on hurting me. I shall leave it as it left me, marooned for all eternity, in the center of a dead planet, buried alive.
And as Bobo said, maybe there are reasons Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan should be buried in the past. So it's time for our...
Worst 3.
But worst 2, just like the like section. All right, let's go and say one thing we disliked about Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. I mean, really, was there any? Because this is such a perfect movie. But Mike, why don't you give us
before we get started, I want to interrupt it. Yes. I almost watched the director's cut to this because there's that and the theatrical version. I'm curious. I wound up watching the theatrical because I thought that would be the one that most people will watch, but I'm curious what everyone else watched.
I watched the theatrical as well.
Okay.
I didn't know there was a director's cut, so I think I watched the theatrical.
Okay.
I almost watched the director's cut for my second viewing because I wanted to see what was different, but then I looked up on the internet what was different and decided I wasn't going to pay $3 for that.
Okay.
I watched whatever version was free on Amazon Prime Video.
So probably the theatrical, I would imagine. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Do you happen to know, Paul or Mike, what's in the director's cut that's worth $3 or not worth $3, I should say?
There were more discussion. There was 3 minutes of dialogue that was cut out, interspersed throughout the film. I think there were just a couple of conversations with Spock and some with Selleck. The cut of the elevator scene with no, not Selleck, Savick. It's not Tom Selleck with his mustache.
Quickly Down Under is in the
That's an entirely different movie.
Selleck and a star.
I'm imagining Christy Alley with a mustache.
I would watch that film. Anyway,
is your hair different?
It's regulation.
Wow.
So it wasn't, from what I read, it didn't seem to add it didn't seem like it was going to add $3 to my experience of the film. If someone has a different experience and says, hey, no, you really totally should see this, then I'll watch it for my next viewing.
Okay.
Cool.
And the only reason why I bring that up is because when we reviewed Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, all my dislikes were from the extended edition part.
Yeah.
So
I liked all those extended edition parts.
Oh, I did. Anyway, so I just want to make sure we're all, coming
congealed
from
here. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Mike, what's something you didn't like about Wrath of Khan?
I think that it is Chekhov's inability to count how many planets are in a system. And okay, we need to go to SETI Alpha 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 5, 6. What's the difference? And why didn't they leave a beacon there or something warning, don't just land here. These guys took over a ship this one time. You might want to give this place a good scan first.
Right? And don't they do that as a matter of course? I feel like they've done that in Star Trek episodes that I've seen. Maybe that's more
Those
of a
are
next
all
generation.
like next generation episodes.
Okay.
That's why they started doing that, because of this one.
The fans will come after us. We got to set beacons, guys. Okay.
Remember that time we didn't set a beacon and we unleashed a super villain
And created one of the better Star Trek films?
See, this is why you don't leave beacons.
Okay, exactly. Okay. So that Chekhov can't count. All right. James, what was something you didn't like?
I know he was meant to be a good plot device to show growth, but Kirk's son, David, he really got on my nerves. Like right from the get-go.
But they hugged it out.
That was the most awkward hug that
It's
is
supposed to be.
in the cosmos. Stars went supernova, cringing at that hug.
It's supposed to be.
You know what?
I mean, I get he dislikes Starfleet, but he's such a whiny man-child.
Yeah, he grew up with no fault. Anyway, we won't go down that road.
I
Oh,
expect
interesting.
his mom to walk up behind him and just whack him on the back of the head. Maybe that would have straightened out that blonde perm a little bit.
Oh my god.
Oh.
Yeah.
Another
Ooh, we
person
went
who
for the
dislikes
hair.
curly hair.
I was gonna say another person with a hair issue.
It's
Between the
regulation.
perm and the sweater tied around his shoulders. Oh.
Yeah.
I found this out, and this didn't shock me at all. They cast that dude because the lady playing Carol Marcus is a blonde. Shatner at the time kind of had the poofy hair too, and since he was a perfect match between that, they figured that he would, make sense that was their son.
Yeah.
All
Makes
right.
sense to me.
I guess so. I didn't mind him so much. But was there something about one of the actors or something else that really bothered you, Brad?
I have a little nitpick on the scene when Kirk is sitting in his captain's chair and it doesn't have armrest, and it's very clear that it should have had armrest because he's sitting with his arms crossed in this really awkward place, and it's like this super dramatic thing. The ship is about to be destroyed by Khan, and he's doing this weird thing with his arms. I'm like, that's all I can see in the scene is Kirk's just really strange posture.
I didn't notice that.
I didn't notice it either.
Oh, you will now.
Is it? Doesn't it have armrest at some point? I thought I've seen the captain's chair with armrests, but maybe not.
That chair, I don't think ever had armrests.
Interesting.
They
Interesting.
saved the
choice.
money in the budget.
They later on put some like consoles on the sides of it in other Enterprises.
Okay, gotcha. Well, the more you know. Paul, why don't you tell us something we should all know that you didn't like about Wrath of Khan?
Well, like James, I thought another thing was forced and awkward, and that was the whole dichotomy of I feel old in the beginning versus the last line, I feel young, and I don't think it works well. To me, it feels forced and not genuine. Kind of like,
And it doesn't
why
make
would
sense to me
looking
either,
after
yeah.
the death of your friend, and you look at a blue,
Friend.
yeah, and then you look at a planet which you've seen all your life, dozens of countless of planets, and all of a sudden you feel young because you saw it.
But it's a
it
new
grow?
planet, Paul. It's new.
Oh,
It's brand new.
He felt young
The
because
Romul-
he was on the deck of a starship again. He was doing what he was supposed to be doing.
Oh, yeah.
I think it was just the Romulan ale kicking in.
there we go. Now that I can buy.
Who
That
did-
seems genuine.
He didn't want to look cold in front of who? James? Oh.
Yeah.
I will say, start picking up on that. Something I didn't like was he's carrying this book around for most of the movie, and I don't get why he's always carrying it around. Why does he set it down, put it in his bookshelf or something? But no, he's like carrying it around everywhere. It seems
They don't have Kindles back then.
You mean in the future?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
But still, I didn't get the significance of him carrying around that book, which I think is that where that whole idea of feeling young and his quote that I did for our intro comes from. I don't know what if I feel like that's a poet that I've heard before. Or, is that Milton? Is that who that is?
Now
I
you're
don't
making
know.
me look it up. Tis
Why?
far better thing.
While you're looking it up, Paul, let's get into...
Comes from Charles Dickens. Go ahead.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. So, why is he
Yes.
carrying around Dickens then? Oh, wait.
Because it was a birthday gift.
The gift from Spock. It was a symbol of his relationship with Spock,
Yeah.
in fact.
Yeah, but what's significant about Dickens in their relationship, in their friendship?
It's just something that, they have to quote to make the movie feel like it makes sense.
No, see, it should have been... it would have made more sense if it was like some sort of contemporary book to Moby Dick, or if it was Moby Dick itself, just different portions of it, like with Ishmael and...
Well, that would have been
guy.
the wrong character to have a Moby Dick, because Ahab was the obsessive character.
Yeah.
That fit Khan.
Okay, that's why I'm saying
so
you should
Kirk is the wistful
Ahab.
one.
So
Plus,
why
we
not
don't want to
have...
make the subtext text.
I was saying, why not have another book that...
Hop
sort
on
of-
Pop by Dr. Seuss. Let's hop on Khan.
That's the one
There
they gave to
would have been
Chekhov.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I need Fox and Socks, Paul. Come on.
All right. So
There might have been a certain...
2 fish, 3 planets, 5 planets.
yeah.
No, but see, Fox and Socks is perfect because at the very end, he tricks the fox into the bottle, much the same way Kirk tricks Khan while he's in the nebula. See, it'd be perfect foreshadowing, but no.
Okay, but no, we had to go with Tale of Two Cities.
Apparently,
Trying to get
okay.
education in here.
Okay. Anyway, that was one of the things I didn't like. But now let's get into
Why is
things
this guy carrying a book? I hate this.
hate books. Jeez.
It's the future. Nobody reads anymore.
Get your Audible account, Kirk. Let's get into the things we hated most about Star Trek II. And let's go up to Bryan. Let's start with Bryan this time.
Okay, I'm going to make an enemy here out of James.
Dun, dun, dun.
Watch your words,
This is kind of a quibble that I have with like Trek in general.
Okay.
Uh-oh.
And that's the attitude of the ships. And they make them,
What?
They have such bad
Ship's got attitude.
Right, it's just sassy. I mean,
their orientation. And in every Star Trek, when two ships meet each other, they like come up and they go nose to nose with the same up vector. It's like it's space. There is no up. Why don't they come like from the side and underneath and like
Yeah.
And Spock even points it out that in the reason that they win the last battle is because Khan thinks two-dimensionally.
Yeah.
Just like the filmmakers.
Yep.
And so Kirk's idea is, okay, we'll go down.
Right.
But then we'll come back up and be on the same plane to shoot at the
it's
Reliant.
like, why doesn't he shoot him from underneath?
Right.
Exactly, because the Reliant is a disc.
Yeah.
The Reliant, and the reason they couldn't hit him before is they had to aim manually, and it's got this narrow profile.
Mm-hmm.
If you shoot from down below, it's this nice big big target.
That's
It's practically target shaped, you know.
Think of how that would look on screen if the Enterprise is coming up straight and level, the Reliant's coming up from underneath it, and it's like, Khan, are you over there? Yes, Kirk, but we're all super drunk and derpy over here.
I
But you don't have to tilt like the cast on its side, just the ship.
The ship is on its side, and so does the camera angle of it. That's how Star Trek works.
That's not how space works, James. Oh my gosh.
So it's a very avant-garde Star Trek film.
Why is there a Dutch tilt in my Star Trek? It's so weird.
I think all those lens flares were for.
You know what? That's a great point, Bryan. I hadn't ever thought of that. I mean, even in other space movies or where there's ship battles, there isn't a lot of using the third dimension. There's mainly just like either side by side, like naval ships, or like face to face.
And it's not too bad most of the time, but when they point it out in the script and then do it anyway.
Yeah, I totally see that. James, what is your tragic maker that Bryan will hate?
I don't know if he'll hate it, and I'll be honest, I had a hard time picking out something from this movie that I really, really disliked.
Okay, I can give you one if you like. There's some really bad ADR a lot of the time, but
mine has to do with Kirk himself.
Oh,
in that,
really?
When you think about it,
Whoa! Tread lightly.
Hear me out, my man.
I know. You may proceed. Just tread lightly.
All right. This is the
No, I
worst
can't handle it. Go for it.
Kirk is the worst guy to buy birthday gifts for.
Yeah.
I mean, you buy him an awesome antique book, and he just carries it around everywhere, but barely reads it. And
It's because he has to keep
hundreds of years old. Obviously, you want to put this thing away somewhere safe, and instead he's just earmarking it. He's messing up the binding, and he's probably Mike. This is going to drive you. I'll bet you he bends a page to mark where he left off.
Don't do that. Don't do that. Oh, stop.
Yeah.
Stop.
he didn't have an antique bookmark to go into it, so he had no choice.
Exactly. Well, I'm on page 53. I'll just phaser the corner here. That'll be fine. And okay, then he gets some glasses, and he complains about it. And he gets Romulan ale, and he just whine, complain. Oh, I'm old. I want to be a captain.
You know what's weird? I almost was expecting that his whole eye thing was going to go away, and they were setting up that he needs glasses now because something about him being in the Genesis cave or the Genesis explosion was going to heal his eyesight. But no,
no, you get old.
Apparently, that's it. So that was odd to me. But okay.
I did think the glasses were clever because McCoy was like, normally I'd prescribe you this medication that would fix your eyesight, but Kirk's like, I'm allergic to that. He's like, well, now you get glasses.
Yeah. Makes sense.
And when you go back in time, you'll really, really thank me for them.
Yep, that's true.
All right. Well, let's go next to Mike. What is your tragic maker for Wrath of Khan?
As much as I like the concept, I thought that the execution.
Concept?
Oh, I didn't realize I did that. All right. Well, good night, everybody. I mean, that's why I come here. Anyway, the SETI eels is something that really bugs me. That's the name of those earworms. Is because it's from the beginning. I just think that the explanation of them is campy. Like, this is the only surviving indigenous thing. Like, really? So what? You guys been eating?
What have you been eating?
They've been eating that. It's like, and they well, what it does is it makes you more suggestible because it wraps around the cerebral cortex. Like, okay, hold on, this little thing is wrapping around your entire cerebral cortex. That's a lot of brain mass. Well, yes, it might do that, but okay, back me up here, Paul. Isn't not the place that makes you more suggestible the prefrontal cortex? I mean, come on. I mean, everybody, seriously, right?
According to the earworm that's wrapped around mine, I would say yes.
And when Chekhov is engaged in this moral struggle, like, oh, do I actually shoot the captain? It's really hard. It's like the brain eel just gives up and dies. Like, no, this prefrontal cortex is putting up a fight. I'm out of here, dudes. I'll hit the deck. Like, why? Why did it do that?
I was expecting Chekhov to die or something, or
he's
or for McCoy to help him. I mean, you've got a doctor there.
And they said they put creatures in our bodies. Oh, should we scan him? Nah, it'll be fine. Buck up, buddy.
The reason that he discounted the planets and the reason the earworm gave up on him can all be summed up in one easy explanation:
space madness.
Stereotypical Russian.
Okay. I don't get how that explains it, but all right.
Oh, it doesn't explain it at all. It's just the reason they give.
Oh.
So yeah, it was a great concept, but it just I don't know, the execution I thought was did not make sense.
Yeah,
and it licked Chekhov's ear. So
you're not talking about like the creature effects. You're just talking about the overall effect of the worms. Didn't make a lot of sense.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
But as a kid, the creature itself like scared the bejesus.
Yes, I could.
Oh, it made a lasting impact.
Yeah, I still have.
Yeah.
Paul, let's go to your tragic maker. Was it the worms? Was it the con?
Not only was it the worms that I wrote down. Why does the earworm leave Chekhov at the most convenient time?
Yes, exactly.
What saves him and the captain when apparently this has never been a problem before. too easy to get out. And then also I was trying to pick between the two of what Bryan said with the ships and the angles of like, oh, well, he doesn't think three-dimensionally. Well, neither do you.
No, you know what? Now that I'm recalling it, I will say he comes up from behind and hitting the engine seems like a really sensitive place, which you wouldn't be able to necessarily hit from
the
underneath.
whole bottom thing is an engine. Just
is it?
Well, he tried it.
Oh.
He tried it once before and missed.
Yeah.
So he did the exact same thing. He just got lucky.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not super savvy on like, are the nacelles the engines? Or are they what exactly they do? But okay, fine.
They generate the warp field.
Okay.
There you go.
So,
and also, just out of curiosity, my copy, for some reason, a lot of the background was kind of like flickering throughout the whole thing. Did anyone else have that?
was it
No.
was it your Vudu copy that you're watching?
Yeah, I watched it off of Voodoo.
I know,
but I also have the Blu-ray, and I wanted to check that, but yeah,
I
just
know
wondering.
because I watched it on Vudu as well, and I didn't feel like it looked. There's a lot of grain in it that I wasn't expecting for like your typical like HD or 4K release or whatever it was. I guess I did watch. You know what? I did watch the SD version of it, so that probably explains it. But it's still as expecting it to look a little cleaner. It looked It looked clean except when it was in space. In space, it had this weird grain to it. So I don't know what.
I wonder if they did some weird compression on it.
That could be.
It's probably. I was about to say because it's streaming, it's probably compression that they use. But I wish, or maybe it was a worse copy of the film that they copied from. But anyway,
or were you watching it in a nebula? That really messes with the displays.
You know what? I didn't think I was, but I don't know how to prove I'm not.
That's a good point. Before I get to my tragic maker, we have one from Chat. Dale says, Christy Alley. In 1981, it may have been a great idea to cast her in the role of Savick, but today, looking back, she just looks awkward.
I don't think she looks awkward at all. I thought she did great.
All right. I mean, I don't know.
Sorry to disagree with you, Dale, but I disagree with you.
She had a couple of moments where I thought she didn't quite get it right, like especially the funeral
where she's crying when she's not supposed to be emotional.
No, she's looking like I have someplace better to be.
Somewhere where everyone knows her name.
Exactly.
Not yet.
Look who's talking now. Oh my gosh. Wow.
Was she in that? I never saw it.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. Her and John Travolta with Bruce Willis voicing the baby.
I remember John Travolta being in the first
That's
one.
great. I'm so glad you remember.
I'm glad we're spending all this time on a
who's talking
that we're not even reviewing.
Let's get to my tragic maker so we can put this movie to bed. And that is, where is the sunlight coming from in the Genesis cave? I do not understand this at all. I get all the vegetation being there, sure, but there's just a sun in a cave? Oh, okay.
And apparently she can cook. But I don't see a stove or
I
anything.
didn't see what food are they eating. I guess vegetation, but yeah, I didn't see what they're eating at all. Did I just miss that?
All you see is a sheer drop off and a weird waterfall in the background.
Yeah, exactly.
That doesn't match up with the
right,
angle.
Very bad perspective on the waterfall.
Exactly.
So I just did not understand how that was a thing. But
really, Dr. McCoy, you must learn to govern your passions. They will be your undoing.
Yeah, I got a real problem with that, Doc. Now that we've all talked about the things we dislike or the things we do like, we've entered all our targeting information into the firing computer. Alice, do you have a firing solution for us?
Firing solution complete.
Are we shooting at the
Rated
movie?
salvo at the ready on your
Yes, with
mark.
our salvo authority.
With our salvo at the ready, Paul.
It sounds like salvo.
We are shooting our final rating at the movie, which will either destroy it for future viewers or encapsulate it in a shield for future viewers.
All right,
That's how this works. Yeah. So let's. It's time.
You must transmit the specifications for this weapon to me.
Okay. I'll get around that.
But the shields can be brought down with a prefix code.
Exactly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The same combination with luggage. Okay, guys. enough Spaceballs talk. What is our final reign for Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan? Do we rate it a classic? We'd recommend anyone go see this movie, whether or not they've seen it before. A nostalgic, we'd only recommend it's worth rewatching if you have seen it before and have fond memories of it. Then it's totally worth your time. But if you've never seen it before, you may not really appreciate it. Or a tragic, we'd recommend no one see this movie. If you haven't seen it before, keep that the way it is. And if you have seen it before and you think you have fond memories, don't sully those memories with a rewatch. So let's start with our guests. We'll start with James first. What is your final reign for Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan? Tragic. I'm very surprised to hear that, but okay.
I'm squishing the tiny head on the screen right now.
No, what is it?
It is still a classic.
Classic. Awesome.
Confirmed classic for me.
Confirmed classic. And not only classic, confirmed classic. We've entered that into the codex here. All right, Mike, what is your final rating?
I'm going classic.
Classic. You predicted nostalgic, but going classic. What?
Yeah, I watched it twice even.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. So what sort of bumped it up for you? Like I forget why you said you thought it would be nostalgic.
I thought it would be nostalgic because it's a 1980s movie. It has a different pacing. Mm-hmm. And I thought that the story would kind of drag a bit, but I thought that though it does show its age in terms of this is how they told stories in the 1980s, mm-hmm. they had just such engaging characters. Especially with Khan and the way that he was written, and I thought that he really elevated the show. Plus, I thought that the pace kept up well enough to engage a modern audience.
Totally.
You said this was written like a movie, like in the 80s? That's not true. Short Circuit 2 was not written like this movie, Star Trek 2.
I am going to trust you on that and not revisit that.
Okay.
Wow. Okay, so classic for Mike. Bryan, what was your final rating?
Well, I predicted nostalgic, but like Mike, I'm changing mine to classic.
Okay.
Wow.
As I was trying to make a list of the things that I didn't like, and I had to really work hard.
Oh, I can give you more. Would you like
to come up with
stuff?
More
things?
Yeah.
I did have a couple more, but I had to kind of work hard at it. And as I was like, you know what, this movie is really, really well mm-hmm. done, really well made, and it does the pacing is not as bad as I remembered
mm-hmm,
it being. Mm-hmm. It kept me engaged.
Awesome,
so, classic.
So, Paul, I assume it's going to be a tragic for you because the opening sequence was just so long and boring.
Well, but honestly, when watching this, unlike Bryan, I was surprised how many dislikes I was coming up with. My list of dislikes was far a lot longer.
Oh, wow.
Far a lot longer than my likes.
Far longer.
Yeah,
a lot
that
longer.
Too.
Yeah.
Sure, one of those, both. So... this is a flawed movie,
mm-hmm.
but despite that, this is one of my favorite all-time movies. Like, this is so good. And every time I say this quite often, this is my favorite Star Trek film, and then I see the reboot with J.J. Abrams that some people think is an abomination, but I really enjoy it just for its funness. And when I watch that one, I think, I think it's tied with Wrath of Khan. But after watching every time I watch Wrath of Khan, I'm like, no, this is the best Star Trek film. Despite Galaxy, what I sometimes say Galaxy Quest is the best Star Trek film. But
Amen.
Honestly, this is. So it's classic for me.
As was mentioned, there's 13 Star Trek movies, and anytime people make lists, whether online, official, or personal, the one that always tops the list is Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan.
Except when it comes to this guy. No,
I was about to say, except at the box office. Yeah, I'm really interested to hear what the guy who's never seen it before and is untainted by memories is going to say about this.
There like you guys were just saying, there are definitely flaws to this film, and I don't really have any words. Spit them out.
Spit it out.
I'm gonna have part of me wants to be a hipster and go against the grain, but it was an enjoyable movie. I did have fun with it. Like you guys were saying, it's paced well. The effects were really good, and the characters. I cannot get over how much I love dialogue between I know I said this already, but dialogue between especially Kirk and McCoy Bones, but also like the Kirk Bones Spock trio is just, it's really fantastic. So anyway,
this film had a lot of good dialogue.
Yes,
so.
yes.
You proceed from a false assumption. I'm a
false
Vulcan.
assumption?
I have no ego to bruise.
That's great. Well, yeah, I still don't get one thing that they said, but we won't go there. Okay. Oh, you know what? Fine. Let's address it now, guys, because I'll forget otherwise.
All right.
And I hear this quoted in other places: "The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few or the one." So who is he talking about there? Is he talking about the crew versus Spock, or the crew versus Kirk, or who?
You know what? When they first talk about it in the first half of the film, I have no idea. It seems very out of place.
Okay.
But at the end, the needs of the crew to survive outweigh the needs of Spock, the one,
I understand
to survive.
So I understand that.
Yes.
Geek
Okay,
at Arms.
that answers your
Explain the first iteration.
I viewed it as that.
Well, it starts with Jeremy Bentham, who wrote his seminal work on utilitarianism back in the. Okay, sorry, no, I'm
No, you're
philosophy professor.
You're doing
here.
great. I'm very intrigued to see where you spin this yarn. Keep going.
Oh, you really do not want that, Francisco. This literally was about an hour and a half to my philosophy students.
Oh my word.
Do you have that on a separate podcast that we can listen to?
I actually think I might have an MP3 audio lecture recorded for that, so I'll send it on over if you want.
Very cool.
Something else for me to ignore. Thanks.
The truth.
Hey, if I only lose 1 in 5 in a classroom, then I'm doing great. So this is fine.
But do you have Bryan or Mike? Do you have an actual answer?
So if I'm remembering right, the first time was when Spock was trying to persuade Kirk to take command. Was that right?
Yes.
All right. So I think that the way I was interpreting it was that the needs of this crew, to go on this mission, we need the most experienced captain. And while I would like to be the captain of the Enterprise, I think it's more important for the most experienced person to be doing that for the benefit of everybody instead of just for my benefit to gain experience.
But that'd be the best.
Oh, that's a stretch, but I can see.
Yeah, I guess
that's how I interpret it.
It almost seems like the needs of you outweigh the needs of me in that instance. But okay, I guess
I think he was thinking of his crew,
much like the
Along the lines of Bryan, I viewed it as Spock recognized that there was a situation, there might be people in danger, maybe people in need, and that their needs, the needs of the many, outweighed the needs of him to hold on to command for whatever reason there being. He already said, I have no ego to soothe.
Okay.
So don't worry about those people are the ones that are important. You're the experienced captain. The only time we've ever seen Spock as captain has been as a training captain.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
So give Kirk the chair and let him do what he does.
Then, okay. Thank you guys for explaining that for me. That makes me feel a lot better about my classic rating. So thank you guys.
And Raytheon says the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the Q.
Oh my gosh, right?
So I disagree.
But you'll never persuade the Q about that.
Yeah, I think the Q is far better. But he's one of my favorite characters. Anyway, moving on.
I don't know if I'll keep this in. We'll see. But Dale has a question. He says, when Spock dies in 2, reemergence 3, spoilers, because I haven't seen 3 yet either. But
you did 4. See 4 when he's alive. Mr. Watches it out of order.
Okay, you know what, guys? You know what? But I don't know how they find him, so whatever. Or maybe whatever. He says, do you think that the Spock we get in the later movies is quite different Spock or the same Spock than in 2, I assume, and 1?
Oh, wow. I haven't revisited the Trek movie in decades. But I do remember Bones saying at one point, I liked him better before he died.
Oh, interesting.
So I don't know if they had a subtle character shift, but
he did have some growth through 4, 5, and 6. 3, of course, he's a blank slate.
I was about to say he had a lot of growth in 3.
He's doing all sorts of weird stuff.
But yeah, by the end of 4, when I shall make the best guess that I can. He's telling jokes.
Yeah.
By that time, I think he definitely did show some different character traits after he died and came back.
Okay.
I feel like his emotions were closer to the surface.
Okay. Gotcha.
He's certainly not the same Spock he was in Space Seed.
Wow. Okay.
But
so
neither is the same Kirk.
Based on all those ratings, we, the Retro Rewind podcast, rate Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan a unanimous classic film. We recommend
out of 5. That's amazing.
Anyone go and see this movie. It'll be if you just hate sci-fi, that'd be the only stipulation to not watching this.
No, you should see it. You need to get over your hatred of sci-fi and see this film.
But yeah,
and why are you listening to this podcast?
That's a fair point. But yeah, we definitely recommend you go and see Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, whether or not you've seen it before. But now it's time to get back to our own time. Good old 20XX.
20XX.
Comsat online. Receiving incoming transmission.
Feels good to be back, but we wouldn't have been able to travel back to 1982 to begin with if it weren't for our amazing reflux capacitors, namely Jared Holzhauer, Deborah Powers, Bryan Keane, Patrick Hicks, LJ Lowry, Chris Cowan, the Feel and Film Podcast, Chris Owens, Geek Devotions, The Untold Podcast, Mrs. Lomax, James Kennison, Daryl Hafner, Kevin Joshua Burnham, Drew of the Cellcast, Ashley Cronenberg, Pastor Dewson, Kennethan, Redeemed Utaku, and newest patrons Ryan Lingle, and that's our Bobo. In addition to 5 other awesome patrons as well. Thank you all so much for keeping the gigawatts coming. And if you want to help us keep flying for as little as $1 a month and get bonus content for your generosity, head over to retrorewindpodcast.com/support to see how.
Also,
this stream is sponsored by PaulJPowers.com.
And while we're thanking our supporters, we want to give a big Starfleet hug who doesn't even know where all its ships are. And how could there be one ship in one quadrant when there's actually 2, like the Reliant? Anyway, we want to give a big Starfleet hug, even though anyway.
Now I just want to rate this nostalgic. I think you may have a good point.
Yeah. We want to give a big hug to our subscribers on Twitch.
Stay in your lane, Fritz. He's the interrupter.
On Twitch, which is all right. Fine. Mutiny away. Here we go. No, Twitch is another way that people can find us there, and you can send us a couple bucks a month. And if you have Amazon Prime, you can subscribe for free on Twitch. Find out how at retrorewindpodcast.com/Twitch Prime.
But hey, let's keep the gratitude train going now because we love hearing from, from you, be it our Apple Podcast reviews, comments on our website, or through our contact form. And here's what one of you had to say.
This comes from Alex Ortiz. He writes his dissertation paper beginning with, I want to share a big thank you to the crew at the Retro Rewind podcast. Y'all have inspired me to make a podcast of my own called the Peter Pan Syndrome Podcast. This message is a genuine thank you message. It's not a request for a plug on your show. Quite the opposite. I'd like to naturally grow an audience of my own. So if you're listening, don't pay attention.
Oh my gosh, Father.
He goes on to say, also, not to stereotype, but I'm not sure if your audience would enjoy my content. It is very R-rated for language and sexuality. I did, however, give y'all a shout-out on my pilot episode to give y'all the credit for the Inception drop that I plan to use. Now that I say that out loud, I'm not even sure if I want y'all, my future audience, to bleed into yours. Whatever. So just let me know if you do or do not want me to plug you on my show, on my episodes. I think that's to us. Anyway, he continues. I had planned to plug you guys whenever I used the Inception drop to give y'all credit, but then I realized it came from a movie and not from you guys. No, he didn't say that. He continues on to say, I am new to the podcast creator community, so I just wanted to share those concerns with you because I really love being a part of your community, and I want that to continue. Well, thank you so much, Alex.
Yes, thank you, Alex. I responded to Alex. He sent me this over Facebook Messenger. But yeah, and he's not wrong when he says his podcast is very R-rated, but him and his wife do the podcast, and I'd say if you're used to like Joe Rogan, I suppose, if you listen to his podcast, then that's sort of in that sphere of R-ratedness. But they do a good job. I've listened to a couple of their episodes, and they're fun to listen to. They have an episode on Rookie of the Year and Anaconda, and I think one other one. But so if that sounds appealing to you, they do sort of a blow by blow of things they liked in the movies that they cover, and then they do a like and dislike section, and then they do kind of like this classic nostalgic tragic, but it's something they call it something
their
else.
Own rating.
Their own rating. So yeah, thank you so much.
But there's no nudity on the podcast, is there?
Well, you know what? I don't know. It's audio only, so
it says sexuality R. So
I know. It's
anyway.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you, Alex, for reaching out to us, and don't mind Kirk because he's a little bit frustrated because he's like, very family friendly. So he says,
RetroRewindPodcast.com/209 is the place to find timestamps for this episode, links to contact us, and links for voting on the movies you want us to review. But that's not the only place you can reach us. Paul, where else can people find the show and also yourself?
PaulJPowers.com. That's me. Feel free to talk to us and share anything you like or find funny that is 15 years or older. We are on social media, believe it or not.
What?
We have not left it like a lot of these people are left and right. We are still Retro Rewind Pod on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and you can even join our Discord server by going to retrorewindpodcast.com/Discord. Also, I've mentioned we are on Twitch. Watch and chat with us live like these fine folks are doing right now, and they're interacting with us, and we're trying to interact with them as little as possible because, trying to keep the fans at bay. No, we love you guys. It's awesome. Join us anytime that Francisco's streaming on Twitch, or even when he's not streaming, you can watch old episodes by going to twitch.tv/Retro Rewind Pod, where he plays games, pixel art. So follow us there. And if you want to find me, PaulJPowers.com, go by there and say hi. PaulJPowers.com.
Thank you so much, PaulJPowers.com, for being an awesome crewmate, friend, co-host. It's an absolute pleasure to get to explore the cosmos of movies and games with you for this show.
Through the movie space-time Wait, what is it? Hold on.
A movie space-time continuum.
Yes.
Nice.
And I'm also grateful to our guests for taking time to discuss Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan with us. So let's each go around and tell us how to find you online. If there's anything you'd like to promote, let's go alphabetically and start with Bryan.
All right. Well, we are geekatarms.com is our website. You can find me at brianray.name if you're interested in visual effects and personal finance.
And James?
You can also check us out on Facebook at geekatarms.com/
reverse that.
Yes, reverse that. Strike that. Reverse it. Facebook.com/geekatarms. And I'll leave the Twitter handle to Mike.
And we are Arms Geek on Twitter.
Excellent.
Pump you up.
Yeah. So thank you all for coming.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. I think we've wanted to do.
I've been looking forward to this for years.
I've been wanting to do something like this for a while. I think you guys originally reached out though,
but to have you as a crew to help us review it is just like a whole nother level of awesomeness. So
I think it was one of those things when you were doing Star Trek, you were doing Star Trek 5, and I think that 6? I might have said, or 6. No, you're right, it was 6. But I listened to the episode, and I thought it was a great episode. And then I'm like, hey, I said to our audience, come on, let's vote for Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, because I want to hear that happen. I didn't expect I'd be here for it, but, hey, I'm thrilled.
Yeah. It is really great to have you guys on. And thank you for bringing your own thoughts and ideas and knowledge of the film. Is a real treat to have you guys on. So thank you again so much, Bryan, Mike, and James. Really fun getting to have you here, but you're not who I appreciate the most. And I don't even appreciate
way to bring him down after the big thank you.
Oh, we're used to it. Yeah.
Who I appreciate most is actually you. Yes, you listening right now. Probably Brian, Mike, and James, Paul, Kirk, Savick, Spock. I mean, thank you guys so much for listening to the show. Whether this is your first time listening or you're a part of the Rad Rewinder community, we pray that you're more joyful now than when you first hit play. I have been and continue to be Francisco Ruiz. Find me on Twitter at FXRetro_ or on Instagram at FXRUIZX, and you can DM me there for pixel art commissions.
And finally, we are honored to be part of the Christian Geek Central Network at ChristianGeekCentral.com.
You can find us at CGC or our website, but like a Pokemon, we gotta catch you all for Men in... I was gonna sing it, but I can't remember how it goes. Sing it. For Men in Black. Our next episode on the Retro Rewind podcast. That's how it is, yeah.
Retro Rewind mission complete. Proceed to nav point Omega and return to base.
You know, sound effects aside, this whole conversation has got me thinking, like, something's growing in my mind.
Like one of those worms.
No.
Like a seed?
That's it. Let's cover the source material that gave birth to this movie.
Oh, Moby Dick.
Not the whale, the seed.
Seed. This is September. Are we supposed to plant seeds now? Does anybody have an almanac?
You know, I just got my Gray Sports Almanac. Let me take a look here.
Guys, not what I'm talking about. Let's do a quick review of Star Trek, the original series episode Space Seed, which is like a prequel to Wrath of Khan.
Oh.
All right. Now that we're on the same page, let's just go through. We'll give a quick, our classic makers, our tragic makers. We all watched this episode. I'm not sure if we watched it before or after, but I actually had it was interesting. I watched this before I watched Wrath of Khan. And
I
gotta say, I think I enjoyed the dialogue in that just as much between Kirk, Spock, and McCoy. That is still the highlight for me. Everything else was like, it's cool to see like Khan's origin and what have you, and is awesome like knowledge going into this movie of the setup. But yeah, it's really those characters that I enjoyed the most. Brian, what did you like the most about Space Seed?
Pretty much, specifically that scene in the conference room where it takes Spock an embarrassingly long time to realize that the other three are teasing him.
Yes, exactly. Mike, how about you?
That's so funny.
I think that what I liked the most was the fact that somebody really, it was just the quality of the writing in terms of somebody getting inside the head of somebody who knew how to manipulate another human being. And it was scary, but they also wrote it scary good.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it did seem like very much like a Napoleonic type person would be. Yeah. James, how about you?
I want to give it up to Ricardo Montalban's performance as Khan.
Yeah.
This man who portrayed someone who was an egomaniacal despo. But the thing is, though, all of these claims he makes, all of these great grand plans he said that he had and these things he did, this was a character who believed he could back it up.
Right.
He could actually do it all, and he did. This was a man who, he went from being emperor of most of a planet to waiting to be decanted in a small frozen box. So he might have been humbled a little bit, but that performance really, you really believe that this character could do that thanks to Ricardo Montalban's performance.
Totally. And Paul, what did you love most about this episode?
I loved going back to the writing of the interesting dynamics. This was, this kept me engaged, and this had more intensity, even though it's relatively what they call like a talking heads picture. All of this basically takes place on the Enterprise, and it's just dialogue basically between people, and it's fascinating. And it's even more fascinating than like the Young Indiana Jones series we're going through, which took place in the 90s as opposed to 1967. It just shows you what a good quality series. A lot of the original Star Trek episodes are really well written, and this is another one that you don't expect it. If you think, oh, it's just another episode of Star Trek, you don't realize as you're going along that the ship is about to be taken over.
Yeah.
Just the whole power dynamics there are really interesting and really well acted and played out.
Awesome. So yeah, it sounds like we really liked the writing for this episode on the whole and the characterization of Khan. What fell flat for us though? Let's start with Mike this time.
I think that it's kind of the flip side of the writing for Khan is that his interaction with Lieutenant MacGyver's is just super cringy. I mean, they kind of took this idea of, oh, we have this starstruck young lady who is just presenting herself to be manipulated. Like, he didn't even have to wake up, and she was he was ogling him, and
she was in love with him before he was even popped out.
I mean, is this a Sleeping Beauty syndrome?
Most beautiful popsicle I've ever seen.
It's a classic celebrity crush.
So yeah, I mean, I get the idea that, you know, never meet your heroes because they'll
try to take over your ship. Yeah.
Right,
they'll seduce you.
It was just a little cringy to see her depicted as somebody who's just presenting herself to be manipulated.
And I mean, they set her up as a smart person, like an historian, and so I would think that she would have a lot more sort of savvy about the conquerors of old and how they really were, and
yeah, but you didn't see Ricardo on set, Francisco.
All right, but that's fair, Mike. James, how about you?
Mine is twofold. Okay. I said my thing I liked the most was Ricardo Montalban's portrayal as Khan. Part of my thing that really brought it down to me was Ricardo Montalban's portrayal of Khan. I mean, he may not have the huge glistening pecs that he does in The Wrath of Khan, but he makes up for it with his raging misogyny.
Yeah.
And the other thing that brought me down was the character of MacGyver's. And at first
she's not like making anything cool out of the things in the storage closet. What's that about?
Thank you.
Yeah, she left her Swiss Army knife at home.
I guess, jeez.
My first thought was, like, how could someone who's supposed to be Starfleet, who's supposed to be an intelligent person, fall so quickly for somebody? But then I kind of got thinking about it more, and it kind of became a lesson to me about the dangers of idolatry.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter how smart you are, how strong-willed you are, how intelligent you think you are, how good-meaning you are. If you have set something onto a pedestal, then you run the danger of that being all that is in your vision. And as we see from her quarters on the Enterprise, she has pictures that she has hand-drawn herself of famous figures from history, and she's literally put someone on a pedestal. I think she had a bust of Julius Caesar in there, and so she has created like a altar, a worship place for these strong, powerful historical figures. And then one literally walks into her room out of the pages of history. It's no wonder that she became starstruck, and she has set herself up an idol. And it's no wonder that she followed that idol.
Sounds like it's well written to me.
But I can still see that. Yeah, it's frustrating to see. I wonder if it's frustrating because, I mean, we all have our own idols that we constantly have to like tear down and put Christ in its place for those of us who are Christians. And so I wonder if that's, I think, what irks me about it. It's like, and I wouldn't have had the vocabulary for it, but I think that's exactly it, James, is that, yeah, it's this idolatry you see that she's having for these historical figures, and it's like, it makes sense, yeah, that she would follow them. And then, I want her to do that, but yeah, I have the same struggles.
It's frustrating because it's so familiar for us.
Exactly.
We empathize with that. You're like, no, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that, because I know how that feels, and I've done that before.
Yeah. Bryan, what did you not like most?
Narratively, I was really unsatisfied that this ended with a fist fight between Kirk and Khan.
Yeah, I can see that, yeah.
Because there
Wait,
is no
that
way...
was not Kirk and Khan. Those were stunt doubles.
Obvious stunt doubles. And it wasn't hand-to-hand. Remember, he did beat him into unconsciousness with some sort of condiment nozzle that was there in engineering.
Right.
Yes.
And there's no way that Kirk could have won that fight. I mean, they've said... We see Khan hit somebody earlier and, like, flings him down the corridor. Kirk can't do that.
Yeah.
And so it would have been a lot more satisfying an ending if Kirk had used his actual own strengths against Khan's weaknesses. You know, taking advantage of his ambition and his megalomania instead of him in fisticuffs, which I know that's what Kirk always does, but come up with something better.
Yeah.
This was one of the few times that Kirk got into a fist fight and his
Right,
shirt.
he didn't lose his shirt.
Yeah.
There was only enough room in that place for so many pectorals.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my god.
Khan had them all.
Yeah.
I have brought my pectorals, my intelligence, and my strength to this fight, Kirk. What have you brought? I've brought my phaser.
And my gun.
And this horseradish nozzle.
Oh
Right.
my god.
Yes.
That is what that looked like. It did look. I didn't think about it, but yeah, it does look like a conduit nozzle.
I'm sure some Star Trek nerd out there knows exactly what that is and can tell you exactly what part of the ship it does. But it's the weirdest thing. Thank God it was loose, because if Scotty had tightened that up, and episode over.
Good point.
I'm gonna get so much.
Paul, what was the thing you hated most about Space Seed?
Well, while watching it, I someone mentioned that they really enjoyed the people laughing at Spock, but I didn't. I thought that laugh was so forced, and like, can we get another take on this? This seems like everyone just came back for lunch and action rather than.
And that's good.
But,
it's a Friday. Well, we're done for the day.
Yeah, but actually, after hearing Bryan's explanation about the fight at the end and having the alternate, that sounds more like it.
All right.
More or less forced than Kirk's hug with his son.
The same.
For me, the thing that bothered me the most, and this is actually just my gripe with most of the original series, is those constant like close-ups, lit just the eyes, darken everything else, and it's not just that; it's that it immediately cuts to like full lit wide shot of the two characters talking. It's like, why is
it's called
Why
variety?
is the line shifting so much? It annoys me so much.
The difference between the very detailed look at Khan and then the Vaseline on the lens for MacGyver's was really driving me crazy.
Yes. Let's soften her up, make her look like a
I think
doll.
they were trying to make her starry-eyed.
Yeah.
Looked like the cameraman didn't clean the lens.
Exactly, yes. So
could you focus that a little?
I guess I'll say the cinematography. I mean, which I guess I can't expect a whole lot from.
It's different style.
Different style. But I gotta say, like, for whatever reason, I just started watching some Twilight Zone episodes, the original black and white Twilight Zone episodes. And maybe it's just that they had really perfected black and white, like shooting in black and white by the time Twilight Zone comes out, that it looks really good. But I mean, it looks good compared to the type of cinematography they're doing in the original Star Trek series. Of the few episodes I've seen, I haven't seen like the whole thing or anything.
I've been watching a lot of them. I actually think that you're right. I mean, I did some reading into it, and this was kind of not super early color television, but I mean, if you look at some of the makeup jobs that have been done on the main cast, it looks like they went to Dollar Night at the cosmetology school to say, hey, how much eyeshadow can I get? And they said, well, we'll find out. So
yeah, exactly.
And so they're working with how does this visual medium work now? And so I think that they were still working out some of that in the age of television they were in.
Yeah, very fair. All right, guys. Well, that was our sort of real quick rewind of Space Seed. I'll cap us off before we get out of here by saying one thing about Wrath of Khan that I totally forgot to mention. So we'll just put it here at the end.
Oh.
bonus thought. I seriously thought there was going to be a whole thing with the Klingons in this movie. I I don't know. I don't know why. I think that's what I figured as much. Given that at 4 they start with a Klingon ship. I figured that's where that happens. But yeah, I've somehow transfused onto Wrath of Khan a bunch of Klingon storylines and ships. So I was expecting a big like Birds of Prey versus Enterprise battle, and that's not what I got. So I was very much.
You haven't seen Doc Brown as a Klingon.
No,
yet.
I haven't. So I was very much decepted by all that. But regardless, guys.
Hashtag best Klingon in the movie series.
Oh, Christopher Lloyd is? Oh, cool. Yeah. I didn't know that. Well, anyways, guys.
That can be.
That was a lot of fun. Thank you guys again so much for going on this mission with us. Now let's get you all home, back to Geek at Arms base. Alice, set a course for pod base Gamma Alpha Alpha.
Unable to comply. Black hole detected. Entering event horizon.
Oh, well, that was unexpected.
That's no moon.
Inertial dampeners are offline.
God, right out of Dante's Inferno.
Exo, you know what to do.
All right, Brian, Mike, and James, put on your lens flare glasses because we're going for a ride into darkness.